Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is James Merle Thomas, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Helen Frankenthaler Foundation. I'm pleased to welcome you all to today's informational webinar, which details a lot of the questions around eligibility and guidelines and program specifics and project specifics around our climate initiative. And as a reminder today, the registration portal is now open, and what you will hear today during today's webinar in a few different ways is that you'll need to be sure to click on our website link, go through our brief PDF of our eligibility guidelines, and then take a 2-minute eligibility quiz. That's how you really get started with this process. But before we jump into details, we wanted to just give some quick background on the foundation and the program for those who aren't necessarily familiar with the context for how this kind of program emerged. I'm going to be joined today by a number of colleagues, but I'll begin by emphasizing our team in-house here at the foundation. We're led by Elizabeth Smith, the executive director, who is the inaugural director of the foundation and has been steering us for 10 years through our strategic partnerships and engagement with universities and museums. I'm also joined by Robert Benson, Manager of Administration, who has very helpfully assisted with the organization of today's webinar and a number of details related to the FCI over the years. I'm also very pleased to be joined by a number of peers from ECP, Environment and Culture Partners, and RMI, our two premier partner organizations who help us to evaluate and administer all aspects of the program. Our team members at ECP and RMI have been absolutely integral in everything from the early phases of sort of, theorizing and imagining what this very exciting program could be, on through the very nitty-gritty of engaging with applicants, dealing with reporting, thinking about how this kind of program works. A little bit later today, we're going to be joined by Sarah Sutton, Stephanie Shapiro, and Danielle Sikowski, all members of ECP, as well as by Victor Olje and Tracy Heon, who are joining us virtually as well. So before we jump into the specifics on the FCI, I would just wanted to note a few things about the Frankenthaler Foundation. We were, the foundation technically existed as a nonprofit during Frankenthaler's lifetime, although it formally became active in 2013 upon the artist's death. And for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with Frankenthaler or what these kind of artist foundations do, we fit within a broader spectrum of these kind of artist-endowed foundations. So for those of you who are familiar with organizations like the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation or the Joan Mitchell Foundation, we function in very similar ways. And part of our work has been dedicated to preserving and promoting the legacy of Helen Frankenthaler. Along the way, we as an organization have been increasingly involved with philanthropy, with grant making, with strategic partnerships with universities, museums, visual arts organizations. And that's manifested in a number of ways. We provide grants and funding to institutions of higher education through endowments and multi-year grants. And just a few years ago, we kicked off, in collaboration with ECP and RMI, the Climate Initiative. And, one of the questions we are frequently asked is, well, what was Helen's own personal attachment to this? She wasn't someone who was marching in the streets in support of things like Earth Day, but Frankenthaler herself maintained a very, very deep and sustained engagement with the natural and built environment around her. And for those of you who are familiar with her practice, would immediately recognize the importance of landscape as very central to much of her painting and printmaking over many decades. And it was out of this sensibility that Frankenthaler had for the environment that the initial impetus of the program came about. And What I will note is that this has evolved into being the foremost and largest private national grant-making initiative in the United States dedicated to climate change action, specifically within the visual arts sector. And so as we get further into the slides today, what we're really going to be talking about is the ways that the initiative speaks to a number of commitments that are already in place with the foundation, support of institutions and organizations that prioritize the visual arts, organizations that prioritize higher education in and around the visual arts, including things like art history, visual studies, as well as organizations that touch on these different spheres. We're very committed to working with art schools, with organizations and platforms that prioritize the visual arts, but may have or look differently, have a different kind of footprint. And we'll get into some of those expanded categories later today. Stephanie, you can move on to the next slides if you'd like. So in broadest strokes possible, I'll note that we're now entering our fourth funding cycle of an initial 5-year commitment. If you spend some time looking at the press release and the materials surrounding the climate initiative, the initial outlay comprises a $15 million commitment over 5 years. And so we're just about to kick off the 4th year. And historically, we've held one funding cycle per year, and the application season runs through the mid-spring, with awardees being notified throughout the late spring and summer. So Stephanie, you can advance slides further. So I'll turn things over to Stephanie in a minute and just note that we strongly encourage you to take a minute to look at our guidelines and engage with our 2-minute eligibility quiz. And then you'll hear back from our team members within 1 to 2 business days and are able to launch into a full application. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Stephanie. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim. My name is Stephanie Shapiro, and I'm the Managing Director at Environment and Culture Partners, and I'm going to walk us through the process, guidelines, requirements of this year's grant cycle. So first, some housekeeping. If you have questions, please use the Q&A function. We will have a Q&A session at the end where we will, after we've presented all the information, and this presentation and slides will be posted on the website later this week. So just to summarize, there are 4 main steps to the 2024 FCI application cycle. We're going to go through each kind of at a high level with some detail with relevant points, and I'm happy to answer any questions as we go along. Our team will be, again, answering those questions in the Q&A, and we'll be also updating the FAQs on the website. So as Jim said, we really encourage everyone to explore the grant cycle resources. Thank you for attending today. We're hoping this will provide additional context and answer some of your questions. Really the bulk of information is in our eligibility guidelines. This includes actual eligibility for organizations and projects, our 4 grant categories, and our sample applications, which are new this year. We do have a sample for implementation, as well as catalyst scoping and technical assistance. We have our required eligibility quiz, FAQs, etc., also available on the website. Oh, sorry, it looks like there's a little delay here. All right, so this is our timeline of the cycle. So after you've reviewed all of the resources, you need to please take the required eligibility quiz. This includes if you're a previous FCI recipient, and this must be completed by midnight Eastern Time on Tuesday, March 12th. The last day to submit an application is 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Friday, March 15th. In April, we will notify catalyst, scoping, and technical assistance grantees. Grantee agreements will be completed, funding conferred, and a reporting webinar will be held. At this time, we will also invite implementation applicants for the 2nd round. These applications are due in May. And ultimately, in the summer, we will have our notification of implementation grantees, confer funding, sign the grantee agreements, and schedule reporting. And we'll also have the public announcement for all the 2024 grantees at this time, accompanied by a press release and additional items. The second step is to assess eligibility. So after reviewing all of the grant cycle information, we have two stages, organization and project eligibility. And the eligibility quiz only helps you determine your organization's eligibility. And before we go through, I do want to acknowledge that we have a lot of different types of organizations, and we are doing our best to go through the already submitted eligibility quizzes. And so we hope to catch up with those responses by today, tomorrow. And we also know that there's lots of different organization types, some combinations. And so we ask you to make your best decision when you're using the eligibility quiz to determine your eligibility. So I'm going to start with previous FCI recipients. So you're eligible if you've not received a grant for all 3 previous grant cycles. If you have received a grant for 1 or 2 cycles, you're eligible if you are in good reporting standing. And note that for project eligibility, you may apply for the same project, but in a different grant category, or a different project in the same grant category. So for example, the same project, different category is if you received a technical assistance grant for solar last year, but this year are ready to move to implementation. Different project, same grant category is as if you received a technical assistance grant for solar last year and apply for technical assistance for geothermal this year. Eligible organizations must be physically located in the United States or its territories, must be a nonprofit 501c3 or demonstrate a relationship with a vetted fiscal sponsor. You must be able to demonstrate that visual arts are core to your mission, your collections-related activities, exhibitions, public programming, and/or educational and curricular activities. And you must be able to track your energy use on a monthly basis using EPA's free Energy Star Portfolio Manager to fulfill the reporting requirement. Here are examples of eligible organizations across 5 major types. I'm not going to read all of these, but they at the top line include museums, nonprofit galleries, archives, and institutions whose primary focus involves visual arts. We have arts education, higher education, and the study of art, which includes artist residency programs, university or gallery, museums, and centers for the study of art, community and cultural organizations, community art centers, arts organizations, public art organizations, and education centers, artist endowed foundations, and new this year, arts events that can monitor and track their energy consumption or energy generation. This includes biennials, triennials, multi-institutional collaborations, temporary exhibits, etc. We know that you might feel like you don't fall into one of these categories. If you have additional questions or feel like you fall into a few, please email us at info@frankenthalerclimateinitiative.org. I will say, if you are a more of a social services organization that offers arts education as part of your work, you are typically not going to be eligible. Visual arts and arts education need to be the central core to your mission and activities. This leads us to our ineligible organizations. FCI does not fund individuals. Any for-profit entities are ineligible, like commercial galleries or architectural or design firms. Any organization, again, where the visual arts are not the primary focus, including performing arts organizations like ballets and symphonies, botanical gardens, natural history museums, children's museums, libraries, zoos, are also not eligible. Now I'm going to move to eligible projects. Eligible projects must generate clean energy and/or increase energy efficiency, and must be able to track that energy use using Energy Star Portfolio Manager. This can include clean energy generation, like solar panel installations, energy efficiency improvements, maybe replacing your lights with LEDs, replacing or upgrading an HVAC, any innovative building designs and redesigns that could lower your energy demand, or even having feasibility assessments and energy audits, so that you can assess what to do and ultimately have an implementation plan. Ineligible projects are focused on anything other than energy, including landscape, water, waste, materials, and transportation. I'm now going to move into the grant categories. We have 4. A new one this year is Catalyst, and then scoping, technical assistance, and implementation. No grants require a grant match, and all projects must begin by August 31st, 2024. Right, so we're going to start with Catalyst grants. These are new this year, and this is funding to complete a standalone limited component project or to just get you started in your climate journey. Project examples are replacing LEDs in a gallery, installing a window or insulation, or even an electric meter. Or if an energy audit is not free from your local utility, this would also comply. The funding award is up to $15,000 and up to 5 hours of in-project coaching. No financial match is required. Projects must begin by August 31st, 2024 and end by October 31st, 2024. Scoping grants are to hire the expertise to help you understand your energy efficiency needs and clean energy options by undertaking an assessment such as an ASHRAE Level 1 or Level 2 audit or a life cycle analysis of mechanical equipment upgrades to electrify equipment costs. The funding award is up to $25,000 and no financial match is required. Projects must begin by August 31st, 2024 and end by October 31st, 2025. An example of this work is the Swiss Institute, which received a scoping grant last year. They conducted a feasibility study for sustainability and efficiency of the Institute's gallery, including analysis and testing of existing systems, building envelope, dynamic thermal analysis to improve energy savings and consider renewable options. The effort was part of a $5 million project focused on structural upgrades to the building, aligned to their sustainability and climate goals outlined in their strategic plan called Evolving Ecology. They've also prioritized climate in their programming and exhibitions, purchase materials, operations, and advisory groups. Technical assistance grants support the transition from a known need to a specific project that is fundable for advanced assessments or technical specifications, where typically an initial comprehensive evaluation has taken place. You may have designs and specifications you're using to form the project around and typically support more complicated studies or testing needed to begin implementation. This could be a geothermal feasibility study, assessments of replacing windows or a roof, or designing a new building management system. The funding award is up to $50,000. No financial match is required. Projects must begin by August 31st, 2024 and end by October 31st, 2025. An example of this work is at the California College of the Arts. They are designing a microgrid for renewable power and storage at their new campus in San Francisco. This is part of a $123 million capital campaign to expand their campus. This work aligns to their prioritization of sustainability in their curriculum, operations, and programs. This funded the engineering design for rooftop solar, battery energy storage systems, and microgrid controller technology in pursuit of increased energy efficiency and net positive operations. Implementation grants allow you to get started on a project. We're looking for projects that reflect maximum reach of collaboration and cooperation within your institution and with your community if applicable, and significant impact. Projects should demonstrate buy-in from multiple stakeholders, aligned to organization-wide values and plans, whether that is a strategy or sustainability or climate action plan. These may be part of a capital campaign, but it does not have to be. Examples include installing solar energy systems like a microgrid, or sealing building envelopes, or purchasing and installing building management systems. The funding award is up to $100,000 and no financial match is required. Projects must begin by August 31st, 2024 and end by October 31st, 2026. A new requirement of this application is to submit an Energy Star Portfolio Manager Progress and Goals Report reflecting energy use for calendar year 2023. I'll talk a little bit about reporting after next few slides. For example, the Taft Museum of Art in Cincinnati, Ohio, installed a new HVAC as part of a $13 million capital campaign with goals to improve infrastructure, preservation, and rehabilitation of the historic house. The new multi-zone HVAC system was designed specifically for the Taft galleries, public spaces, storage areas, and offices, and ensures all climate-related requirements like temperature and relative humidity are efficiently maintained per art museum standards. The final step is to apply. The application process begins by you taking the eligibility quiz by midnight on Tuesday, March 12th. Next, if eligible, instructions will be sent to you within about 3 business days. You will also be notified if you are deemed not eligible, or if we have questions, we will reach out. We will then email you credentials to register to apply within 1 business day. We'll now walk through the application. So we're only going to highlight some of the parts, knowing that you'll all be able to input your project descriptions and organization information in general. I do want to note that we are only accepting 1 application per organization. However, if you have an umbrella organization, say a higher ed organization, and there's multiple museums under it, each museum could submit an application. Most of our questions in the applications do have a character limit that includes spaces, and that is noted. I do suggest that you look at the eligibility guidelines, which does have a sample application for all of the grant categories to get an idea of what we're looking for. So characteristics of a successful application. We're really looking for you to demonstrate your need, having a reasonable scope which aligns to the requested funding amount, having the right people on your team, right stakeholders involved, and a project timeline that makes sense. Having clear goals and a feasible project, anticipated results, and that makes a really big impact to your organization, community if necessary. In addition, providing substantive project documentation is key. So in section 3, our project information section, this only applies to implementation. We are asking for a detailed outline of your project's key phases and milestones. So we're hoping that this helps demonstrate the feasibility and scope of your work, knowing that these projects are typically more involved. In section 4, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about impact. This is where those anticipated outcomes and results come in. Again, relative to the grant category, if you have data that you've collected or efforts that you're pursuing, including creating a sustainability plan or a prior report that you had the information of why you're now pursuing this project, if you have anticipated energy savings, whether that's money or energy usage or days with cleaner air, we want to hear about it. And this includes other benefits that could be qualitative and might have to do with your staff well-being or visitor well-being and operations. The more specific you can be, the better. For new buildings, we'd like a design build estimate of energy savings and money savings where that is applicable. Section 5 is where you will share information about your project team and key stakeholders. This is an opportunity to demonstrate you have the right team and individuals and subject matter experts working on the project and are involved. For experts or some key stakeholders that you deem necessary, we recommend uploading a short resume in the documents section for those people. Section 6 is the budget section. We have 2 requirements. The first is the budget summary, where you'll input expenses for at least 5 top-line categories we have provided: professional fees, supervision, permits, purchases, and construction. There is an opportunity to add 3 additional expense lines if you deem that optional, which is optional. If you deem that necessary, you can use them. Note that overhead cannot be included as an FCI-funded expense. We are also asking you to indicate if you have additional funds that you anticipate or you already have secured for each of those line items. That could be another grant or an application that you've put in for a state match or with a utility. In addition to filling out the summary, we're asking you to, if you want, you could also upload a more detailed budget if you deem that necessary as well, if that is going to help support your application. The second component is the budget narrative. So we're asking you to provide a more detailed breakdown of the project cost and give us some background for what you use to determine those costs. If you have multiple bids or designs or information that can help us understand how you came up with those numbers, we'd like you to include it. Any of those additional items can be added to the document section. Section 7 is related to reporting, and we're going to review this at a high level. The goal of reporting is to establish and reinforce energy monitoring, even if the award cannot yet be tracked as reducing energy and emissions. We use EPA's free Energy Star Portfolio Manager to have grantees complete this part of the reporting requirement by running a progress and goals report. Again, new this year, this is a requirement to submit this progress and goals report for calendar year 2023 for implementation applications. This is a description of each report, and webinars will be held after each grantee notice period to walk through these requirements in more detail. We also have existing material and webinars on how to enter your data and run these reports that are available. Narratives are usually short and provide a general project status and financial expenditure update. Please note that previous grantees must be up to date on their reporting to submit a 2024 application. This year, we have a new section covering in-project coaching. So in-project coaching consists of any type of support you may need to help make decisions on your project. This could be taking next steps or even identifying if the course of the work that is making sense, or even identifying experts. So Catalyst grantees already will receive up to 5 hours of in-project coaching automatically. For the other grant categories, we have a checkbox for you to indicate if you would be interested in receiving coaching. Based on the responses, we will determine how this will be implemented after the grant notice period. The final section is the document section, and we do have some compliance documents in addition to some optional ones. We're asking you to upload your organization's 990 or a description of your relationship to your fiscal sponsor. You can also add additional documentation, including cost estimates, drawings, technical documentation in support of your application here. We're also asking for 3 to 7 high-resolution, press-approved institution and project images with corresponding image captions and photo credits. Again, for implementation, that calendar year 2023 ASPM Progress and Goals Report is required. Optional documents include a detailed budget or resumes or any additional support items that you think will strengthen your application. Okay, so as we wrap up, a reminder of our timeline. The first thing to do is review the eligibility guidelines and complete the eligibility quiz. And then if you are eligible, to submit that application by 5 p.m. on Friday, March 15th. All of our resources are found on the Frankenthaler Climate Initiative.org website, and we will update it with the webinar recording and slides this week. So now we're going to open it up to Q&A. So I invite Victor and Sarah to join me on camera, and I'm going to stop sharing. And we'll spend, looks about the remainder of our time answering questions that you may have. So I'll open up Sarah and Victor based on some of the Q&As that we've received. Anything that you'd like to highlight?
Thank you, Stephanie. We've been through a few responses about eligibility, and just remind everybody the importance of taking the eligibility quiz, and then using the info if there are further questions, but we'll respond to you after you take that test. We have a couple. I'd like to address Amy Wynn's in conversation with Victor. So the question is repairing and replacing a roof in a way that conserved energy use and use of natural resources for a building on the property that currently isn't and doing artwork, but it will be in the future once it's efficient. Is that eligible? And the question is because tracking the improvement might not be eligible, might not be demonstrative. And I'm pretty sure Victor's got a good thought about comparison of 0 to potential of energy savings.
Thanks, Sarah. And this is a great question because it's indicative of how complicated and nuanced these things can be. But ideally, if a building is not being used now and it's going to be used, it's obviously going to be consuming energy and creating more carbon. So there's what we need to do is have a reasonable baseline to compare against, so and we can get that out of Energy Star. So that's good. I think my thought is that probably would be eligible, though. I mean, if it's a visual arts institution, it will be used for visual arts. And these repairs are being done in a way that improves the efficiency over a base case building. Would that sound right to you?
And it seems like the design avoided energy use by an efficient design of a replacement can help you make your case of how you're doing this in an energy efficient and thoughtful way that supports the visual arts. What are the avoided costs of running this without having fixed your roof, right? Thanks.
I can answer, I see one of the questions I can answer on kind of funding timeline. So if you have already purchased materials or anything related to your project, funding cannot be retroactively, it's not for reimbursement. So any active funding of experts or buying material, anything needs to occur after the grant notification date. Happy to answer any other specifics, and we know sometimes timing, if things gets delayed. So we do understand that. We just need to be in the loop when that happens. I see we do have a question about a college art museum where we intend to apply as a museum and name our own staff, but as a college that holds the 501c3, that is completely fine. Museum, university, gallery, nonprofit, university, and galleries applying under their university, nonprofit, 501c3 is completely fine.
Stephanie, would you like to answer the question about being invited to apply in May for implementation grants?
Yes, so implementation follows a two-round process, and we didn't really get into it here, but you do need to be invited to submit kind of a more updated application. So the second round, there's no new questions. It gives you an opportunity to, we will be providing feedback directly to your application. So it gives you an opportunity to update and strengthen your application. And in some cases, you might have a new bid or provide new information like an updated design, since time will have passed between your original application now and that second one. So there, again, won't be any new questions, but it will be a second round of review to make sure that, any of our questions are answered, and, and that's it. So that is where you'll have a month to apply there.
I see a question about Energy Star portfolio manager reporting, and would be appropriate to include costs associated with conducting an energy audit. So that you can determine opportunities. That phrase, determining opportunities, tells us that that's a scoping application, and that yes, an energy audit would be delightful.
So one question is about if your project has begun. So I do want to clarify. So if you are, pursuing building a new building, right, and you're already working on that project, and part of that is to make sure that you're installing LEDs in that gallery. That is the project that you would be applying to for a grant. So when we're talking about your project timeline, that project needs to fit within the 2-year period through October 31st, 2026, knowing that there's probably going to be more work happening after that on the bigger project that's a part of. So if you obviously there's a lot of bigger projects that are already in progress, and this is just a piece of that. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about the beginning and end dates of your project.
Stephanie, I'm looking at the question about competitiveness of implementation grants. And I'd like to point out that our program has gotten sufficiently popular and well-known that we will have more applications this year than ever before. And of course, they always exceed what is available. So considering whether you're eligible and competitive is really important. And as a grant writer, where you invest your time and energy is not on eligibility. Once you pass that test, then it's how competitive you are. And there's a critical need to advance climate action with measurable results. So in implementation, we're going to expect a very solid statement of what the emissions savings will be, or the power generation will be, and then the emissions avoidance. So the tighter you can make that, and the more valuable the impact you can express, the stronger, more competitive your application will be.
Now, if I could add on to that a little bit, I think it's really part of the DNA of this granting opportunity here is to inspire others. So if you should be able to be most competitive, we'd love to see something that makes a big impact, right? So it should be not just a minor thing. It should be clearly implementable, as Sarah says, making something that is, it's going to happen. And then I think also the creativity, right? If there's something that's inspiring to other people, we'd love to see that. And that can take a number of different, venues. It can be the visibility of it. It can be the unique way that you're approaching it. It can be the size, the impact, but something that actually makes it stand out a little bit more will make you a little bit more interesting for us. And as Sarah says, we have a lot of competition for this funding. So, make it a project that, is really exciting.
Yeah, I do want to add on to that. And I see the question about biennials and triennials. And I think this year, we are really open to create these creative projects. And so that could be anything from, hiring someone to look at how, using energy, how you can make your actual event more energy efficient, or if you're going to have it, figuring out if where one of the venues is for an event, working to make that, as energy efficient as possible. So there's, I got lots of different ideas of what it could be. And if you come up with one and, want to have a, share it with us, we're happy to listen. I think in general, for all of the categories, that also applies, where there's a lot of different energy projects. And we also know that there's lots of non-energy related side impacts, whether that's looking at your embodied carbon or considering your materials, et cetera. So we do consider that in the application, but we're open to you being creative.
I see a question. Is it advisable to apply for a feasibility study in year 1 and then implementation in year 2? That is a sensible sequence. We expect our time frame for next year to be very similar to this, but we don't have a date of when we're launching it. So you'd want to be able to look at your schedule for implementation, allow for some delays, and look at a similar schedule for our application process. It is not a prerequisite, though, to have done funding for technical assistance or scoping before implementation. It's just often an appropriate progression. Anyone else want to comment on that one?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and we also recognize that not all projects go according to plan. So
Yeah.
we understand there's interesting things that happen, but yeah, if possible, we should follow a sequence that is sensible.
Victor, can you give some examples of what might be considered funding in a new building? I mean, that's very vast, but just some examples. We do have a question on that.
Yeah. Well, so new buildings, of course, can be very efficient because you can make all of those sort of design decisions as you move along. So we are looking at new building construction, again, in comparison to the baseline of a building that would be otherwise, under construction to kind of typical codes and standards. I don't think we would necessarily say that there's any one component. You don't need to single out that you're using, fantastic windows or something like that. But you need to make a good case for this is a sort of project that, would not be able to be funded without the assistance of the grant. So we really want these grants to be an opportunity to do more than you would do otherwise. I think that's really kind of the argument to make.
Great. All right, I'm going to answer this question. Can the applicant include local non-art partners like community-based organizations and climate nonprofit partners into the scope of work and budget? So this depends on what they're going to be doing. So if they're providing a service that is for that project, then yes, right, they're expertise consultants, experts that you're hiring. So yeah, those would be included that way. If you have any follow-up to that, feel free to follow up on that question. All right, from Allison, we have, how far along should we be in the design process in order to be competitive and applying for an implementation grant? I know you mentioned shovel ready in response to someone else's question. I think as shovel ready as you're able, knowing that some projects will be of a smaller scope and you might be waiting on a final bid or trying to make a final decision, knowing that you might have some committees, you have this work going through and you need to meet our March 15th application deadline. So as put together and ready to go as that can be, the more competitive that project will be, with the caveat that we know there's exceptions. So I think that is what we're looking for. And one additional component is making sure that you're involving all of the stakeholders that are relevant in your museum or organization. We are looking to make sure that, this isn't just an application from development, that you're talking to, if the facilities team is involved or the building where there's professors that are going to be displaced while something is going to be changed. We really want to make sure that you're talking to everyone and that that's reflected in the application. All right, we have a question about catalyst. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Victor.
I was going to say, Maggie writes about whether or not when they're going to replace their heating system with heat pumps, would the design of a heat pump system make sense as a technical assistance project? And I think it would, actually, having somebody come in and do that. So, yeah. Appropriate.
Stephanie, were you about to jump in on catalyst grants?
Yes, feel free to take that one if you want, though.
Yes, the catalyst grant can fund something capital, more energy efficient doors. There was another question where someone said the oh, sorry, that wouldn't be a catalyst.
Sure, can you read the question?
For catalyst grants, do you prefer to fund a single item in a project such as a window replacement or wall insulation? Or could we allocate Frankenthaler funds to both these items in a budget to improve efficiency within a single organization, single gallery space? The catalyst is supposed to complete something. if there are two things that get completed in the completion for making the gallery work, that's fine. But the goal is that this is a ready to rock and roll project, gets finished and moves you forward as maybe a first or an important illustrative step of the changes that you're making at your institution. And yes, they can be capital.
Just since we're talking about catalyst grants, so what the earliest that a catalyst grant can begin is when the notification comes out in April, and so they must begin before August 31st, 2024 and end by October of this year. These are really meant for, like, you already have the project ready, you have something to fund. This is also really one of the reasons we added this is for smaller organizations that don't have perhaps as many hoops to go through as some larger ones, to really just be able to get funding to do something immediately, and really start out on that work. So that is the timeline for catalysts. If you are looking to do something else or bigger, we suggest applying for implementation if that's what you're looking for. So answering a question about Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So this is a free tool provided by EPA, the US Environment Protection Agency. This monitors energy, I think wastewater, et cetera. This is what we're using for reporting and as for our data of reporting for energy use. This is something that we know we're not comparing organization to organization. The real intent is to get organizations to be monitoring their energy. And so this is trying to inspire and have behavior change to also then be able to have the data of showing here's what we started with and here are the changes after the project has been completed. So someone asked if you need to hire an Energy Star manager. No, this is free. You are able to anyone is able to use Energy Star Portfolio Manager as long as you have access to your monthly energy bills, and that sometimes is sent to your finance office or your facilities office or somewhere else. So we've had the last few years of organizations in FCI use Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So this is definitely something we have resources on that we will make sure are posted on the website clearly in case you want to look at them now.
Stephanie, I see a question on an envelope study, and whether or not that would be scoping or technical assistance. So it sounds to me, Victor, like this is study tells me it's technical assistance. They're going to give you information on the conditions of the structures and capabilities for improvement, as opposed to what are all of the options, which is more of a scoping first pass.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I have to say, we really love all these efficiency kind of approaches. You can tighten up the envelope, have it be better insulated. All of those things are oftentimes areas that get sort of not as much attention as we think they ought to. So the efficiency side is great. And to study that so you can sort of figure out how you can best use the dollars to get the most energy and carbon kind of savings, that's great. So I definitely think it would probably fall in the technical assistance area to get a good evaluation of how we can most efficiently make the most efficient building most efficiently with the most efficient use of money.
Exactly. Which is sort of like the question from Yacy about, we've carried out museums risk management assessment. Is it possible to contemplate reorganizing the storage room in addition to the air conditioning and lighting systems as part of the project? And then there's another question later on about resilience. It has to do with creating partnerships, but both of these questions have something to do with resilience. And although this is not a resilience funding program, resilience is an excellent idea. And you can use that as part of your case for the value of this. But if you were to if you were to describe the project for the storage room, thinking about whether or not the reorganization affects the design of the systems and the efficiency would be important. And Stephanie, did you have a comment on that too?
Nope. Thank you.
I would say one example of that is in the past, we had a building which was increasing its energy efficiency and acting as an emergency shelter for the community. And so you've got those kinds of co-benefits, which the primary thing that we're looking at is, the savings in energy and carbon, but it strengthens your case to show that those co-benefits exist. So we love to see that.
All right, I think oh, go ahead, sir.
I mistakenly took an answer that I'd really rather you took. Implementation grants must begin by August 30th, refer to project planning underway or construction already begun.
If the project is to fund the construction, we understand there's probably some pre-work that has been done. I think there's definitely wiggle room here if the construction is started and it's, to use some materials for that. That is fine. Definitely project planning should probably already have been started, so that would qualify. If you do have some, specific example, feel free to email us. We're happy to take a look at that. But yes, we understand, especially with construction, even existing building work, that some work has begun. We don't expect that you have a clean slate right when it started, but we are looking to have that funding not be retroactive and just reimbursing you for some work that has already been done. That's really the intent. And I do just, go ahead.
For a project where you are raising capital funds and it'll be 3 to 5 years to completion, and you're not going to start until you get additional funds, and so that puts it into a whole nother, perhaps Frankenthaler cycle, that's a concern too. We don't want it. That's why we have a date. We don't want it to go into starting next year. We want, in the following year, we want it to start in alignment with the other projects.
And I do want to say, we understand projects are delayed, materials, we dealt with all the supply chain issues. So this is, we need to have some barriers up for making sure that we have applications that, are viable and we're able to review feasibility, et cetera. And we understand things change. And so we have worked with organizations with their delays or whatever it might be. So we understand project planning and construction. So please understand that we are going to be working with you on this if granted. All right, so we have about 5 minutes left. We've gotten through about almost 70 questions, and again, we know this is a lot of information. We know a lot of you have a lot of really great ideas for your projects or even some additional questions. We encourage you to really, use the information that we've provided and use that in your application if you're eligible to make your best decision of which grant category to use and what projects to pursue. Via email, you can send us emails with any clarifying questions. We will not be able to hold meetings or be able to review draft applications or extensive requests for choosing projects, but we are happy to answer any clarifying questions via email as we can. In addition to, discuss if you have any unique or creative ideas that perhaps are, follow in some of these categories, but maybe aren't fully clear of how those could be executed. So please email us. Our team is here to help you, and we're excited to hear from you and work with you.
And as Danielle noted, this recording will be available to share with others, and we really encourage many people to apply and tell your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please. And we will be finishing up. We received a very large amount of eligibility quiz responses, and so we're still working through those. We are trying to catch up with those today, tomorrow. So please reach out if you have questions again, and we will get all of this information posted on the website by the end of the week.
Thank you all for your climate commitments. We so appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you all for attending, and to our whole team for being here, and especially the Frankenthaler team. Thank you so much. And we'll all hear from you soon.